He was in protective custody, 23-hour-a-day lockdown. He was getting special favors. Officers slipped him a phone. They told him they had his back. And yet an inmate still managed to get him. The result? 23 stab wounds that almost killed him. The fact is, if you're a cop in prison, you are going to need expert-level survival skills. And even then, many are found dead in their cells. On today's episode of the Infographics Show, we're revealing what really happens to cops in prison. Just like any other prisoner, cops enter the prison through the receiving and discharge area. They don't get any special treatment. Fingerprints, mugshots, property taken, paperwork, strip search. The part of the process where a cop will listen the hardest is classification. Not the medical and psychological evaluation, but the risk assessment. That is when prisoners are asked about gang ties, informant history, whether they believe there is any reason they might be at risk in the general population. And that's when a cop will probably say, yeah, I might get seriously hurt. The cop, or now ex-cop, will be advised to stay in the part of the prison called protective custody, or PC, the wing where you find most of the sex offenders, the chomos, and the men who hurt women. He could refuse, but that's unlikely. Like snitches, ex-cops are targets, and targets get exploited. For some, it's beatings. For others, it's worse. Backdoor parole, aka death. The downside is that PC doesn't come with many privileges. It depends on the prison, but it usually means 23 hours a day in your cell. You might not even get yard time, or if you do, it's a segregated yard just for the rejects. Opportunities for work or education are far more limited too. And in prisons that don't have a dedicated PC unit, life for a cop might mean 23 hours a day in the special housing unit, SHU, or solitary confinement, for years on end. Studies show rates of serious mental illness and self-harming behavior, sometimes ending up in death, are up to 5 times higher in solitary than in the general population. Men lose their minds there. Depression, anxiety, PTSD, and those conditions can tip over into full-blown psychosis and loss of identity. As you'll see later, a lot of cops in prison can't handle that kind of seclusion and turn to extreme measures. Even if a protected prisoner can communicate with others, they're among men who preyed on kids, men who brutalized and killed women. Sure, if you're a cop, the officers might treat you a little better, but that doesn't change the fact that your neighbors are monsters. Some of them are killers, and some probably don't much like the police. There will also be former gang members in there, maybe men avoiding a kill-on-sight order, and if you're a cop with a reputation, a torpedo, a prison hitman, might have PC'd himself to specifically get to you. The one advantage a cop does have is outside influence. If a correctional officer gives you a hard time, your friends on the outside can make that officer's life a misery. But it depends on where you're locked up. If you're serving your time in your own state, your buddies might have your back. But it also means there is a real chance that some of the people you arrested are in there with you. You can try to hide, but officers have been known to tell prisoners the lowdown on men just to sit back and watch the violence. You won't be able to keep your identity hidden, and many have to spend much of their sentence alone in their cell. As for the ex-cop in the intro, his story was different. The whole country knew Derek Chauvin. The whole country knew his face. He was the man who kneeled on George Floyd's neck for 9 minutes, an action that set the world on fire. There was zero chance he wouldn't be recognized. He received 22.5 years after 2 decades on the force. He had been decorated with medals for bravery, but carrying 18 misconduct complaints on his record. And that made him a massive target. After a couple of years, authorities moved him from a maximum security joint in Minnesota, the state where he had committed the crime, to a medium security one in Arizona, the Tucson Federal Correctional Institution. Medium means more freedom. But when you have a reputation like Chauvin's, that isn't always a good thing. He discovered that the hard way. In November 2023, 52-year-old John Turskak was no angel. He was serving 30 years for attempted murder and assault with a deadly weapon while a member of the Mexican Mafia. In 1990, he murdered an inmate while serving time at Folsom State Prison. Outside prison, he collected taxes from street gangs and dealers under the threat that if they didn't pay, they'd get hurt. He was an FBI informant too, so not exactly a beacon of morality. Turskak snuck up behind Chauvin in the prison library, taking his improvised weapon, a shiv, and stabbing him 23 times. Officers responded quickly, which likely saved Chauvin's life, although the fact that Turskak could get to him so easily was later scrutinized. Did the officers allow Turskak to get close? It wouldn't be the first time that guards have turned a blind eye to let a high-profile prisoner get whacked. More about that later. Chauvin's condition was listed as stable, and once he was back on his feet, they transferred him to a low-security prison in Texas. where his new inmate pals were likely tax evaders and people who couldn't pay parking ticket fines. Chauvin should be safe there, which is more than we can say for the 6 former Mississippi police officers in Rankin County. They recently got 165 years between them for a home invasion-style attack in which 2 black men were physically and sexually tortured. The 6 cops, calling themselves the Goon Squad, entered the house without a warrant after a call about suspicious activity. For 2 hours, they unloaded a barrage of racial slurs as they handcuffed the men, zapped them with tasers, and waterboarded them. They found the house owner's sex toy and stuck it in one man's mouth. Then they threatened to violate both men. In a mock execution, one of the cops fired into a victim's mouth, slicing his tongue and breaking his jaw. The officers stepped outside to discuss how they'd cover it up, taking the home security video equipment and dumping it into the river. Investigations later showed Rankin County cops to have shoved a stick down a man's throat, burned someone's feet with a blowtorch, and tested new tasers out on suspects. They were maniacs, busting down doors and acting like thugs. In pretty much any general population in the U.S., these men will be beaten, extorted, and possibly murdered. For that reason, they'll be spending 23 hours a day in their cells for many years to come. But some cops seem to have a death wish. In 2001, ex-LAPD officer David Mack was serving time in a federal prison in Illinois when he was jogging in the main yard. He was probably thinking that his 14-year stretch for bank robbery was going smoothly. After all, he was out of state, and no one knew who he was. The problem is, inmates have a lot of time on their hands, and they watch a lot of TV. They read a lot of newspapers and magazines. One day, they saw something about Mack's crime and discovered he was a partner of one of the most corrupt cops in LAPD history. Mack had worked with Rafael Perez, one of the men at the center of the LAPD's Rampart scandal, when officers in the 1990s were running around acting like gangsters. Around 70 officers in total were kicking down doors of innocent families, beating people, and if they didn't find anything, planting drugs or lying about assaults. These cops weren't just dirty, they were filthy, robbing drugs from dealers and selling them to other dealers. It was a license to kill and print money, and Officer Perez was right in the middle of it. Word on the street was that Perez was actually affiliated with the Bloods, with a rumor circulating that he was involved in the murder of the rapper Notorious B.I.G. As you can imagine, Perez was not exactly popular with a lot of the men behind bars. He tried to frame members of the Temple Street gang for a murder outside a McDonald's restaurant when a man was shot in the head. The real killers were members of the Mexican Mafia, but 4 men from Temple Street were arrested and later convicted, thanks in part to a young witness, Sonia Flores. What no one knew at the time was that Perez and Flores were involved. He'd gotten her pregnant when she was just 16 after carding her in a nightclub. She had an abortion, but she claimed that she fell in love with him and would do anything for him. As for Officer Mack, also a major figure in the Rampart scandal, he took corruption to another level when he masterminded an armed robbery at Bank of America, getting away with $722,000. He hid the cash, telling a select few that once he was out, he'd be a rich man. He got out in 2010, but it's uncertain whether he's living the high life. A reliable prison informant later said the cash from the robbery was to pay a man hired to murder Biggie and also take out the now notorious Sean Combs, aka P. Diddy. Ms. Flores later testified that Perez and Mack were partners when they busted down the door of a drug dealer. They weren't there to make arrests. They shot the dealer and his mother, killing both. According to Flores, Mack and Perez stuffed the bodies into the trunk of a car and drove them to Tijuana, where they buried them. However, Flores later recanted her testimony. About 100 convictions were overturned based on just Perez's testimony. He flipped on everyone, so he didn't serve any time in a federal prison. If he had, it's doubtful that he would have lasted a month without being shivved or found hanging. Mack wasn't as fortunate. A former track star, he was enjoying his regular run around the prison yard when several inmates stood watching, all of them furious about what Mack had done to guys just like them. They pounced, shivs in hands, and started stabbing him in the body and neck. Mack only spent 2 days in the hospital. He was ballsy too. He asked to be sent right back to the general population. That's how things go in the US if you're a cop in prison. But if you are a high-profile cop, maybe with information that could get people in trouble, well, things might turn very dark. Take the story of Titisan Joe Ferrari Utanfon. Joe was a Thai cop, the superintendent of the Mueang Nakhon Sawan police station. In Thailand, that job would normally mean earning about 40,000 baht a month, around 1,200 bucks. But as any Thai person will tell you, plenty of cops don't worry about paychecks. For corrupt ones, the serious money comes from the bonuses. With Myanmar to the north, billions of dollars worth of drugs flow through Thailand. And while many cops are trying to stop that trade, Some get paid handsomely to look the other way. For Joe, the war on drugs made him rich. After one of his torture extortion sessions of a drug dealer at the police station, an honest officer got hold of the CCTV recording. It showed Joe and 6 fellow cops duct taping plastic bags over the suspect's head while trying to extort $82,000. After the killers attempted to pass the man's death off as an overdose, ethical officers tried to get the case investigated. They told their superiors, and when that didn't work, they told the local media. Still, inexplicably, nothing happened. So they leaked what was an utterly shocking video and let the public decide as the video went viral. Had it not been leaked, it would have just been business as usual. Joe later said he was sorry, that he just was trying to help the Thai people by winning the war on drugs. No one believed him. It became a huge scandal. Joe was well known to the Thai public. He used to date TV star Pichanak May Sakakorn, and the couple were all over social media. Before his arrest, he was married to his boss's daughter, also a TV actress. He owned 29 luxury cars, Ferraris, Porsches, Bentleys, and Mercedes, and he was one of only 50 people in the world to own a Lamborghini Aventador LP 720 Anniversario, all for a man with a $1,200 a month salary. In Thailand, when police seize luxury assets from criminals, the government gets the sale money. The arresting officer receives 20 cents on the dollar and the informants get another 20 cents, making it profitable for dealers to snitch on their competition. Joe had seized 368 vehicles in total, earning him $24 million. Thailand's anti-money laundering office later seized his personal fleet of vehicles, worth well over $2 million, along with his $1.8 million mansion. They also nabbed a luxury condo and $20 million in hard cash kept in his houses. Joe wasn't even a top police official. He was somewhere in the middle, which raised questions. Was he passing riches upward? His life sentence was eventually commuted, but the scandal sparked a major corruption investigation. Thailand's former human rights commissioner said that this case was only the tip of the iceberg. This is what happens in reality in the Thai justice system, she told the nation. In Thai prisons, cells are often crammed with many men, but Joe was kept in solitary confinement after the prison commander moved him there, supposedly for his own safety. Other sources say he was paranoid, fearing people were out to kill him, so he asked to be moved. He was later found dead in his cell. The official story said he decided not to live, but his family and many Thais on social media were suspicious. The family had visited him that day and said he seemed fine. Forensics experts reported that his injuries were consistent with self-inflicted hanging from a piece of cloth and that there were no defensive wounds, but the public remained skeptical. The blood on the cell floor was apparently ant bites, and the CCTV didn't show anyone entering the cell. Still, Thai PBS News reported that he had been asked to be moved out of solitary confinement and back to the general population, but that was met with refusal. A Thai person wrote on the Pantip forum, "There is no way the truth of this matter will ever emerge." In 2025, Joe's lawyer and his family were still saying that they didn't believe the official story and they would keep investigating. The thing is, in prison, you have no protection. If someone wants to kill you and make it look like something else, they can, easily. So when former cops die, there's almost always suspicion. But not so much with the case of Anthony Orban. This former Marine and police officer was on a night out in 2010 when, in a parking lot, he pulled his firearm and abducted a young waitress in her own car. They drove across town and did horrific things to her, letting her go only once the assault was over. Orban was arrested, but on the stand, he tried to plead not guilty by reason of insanity. He said that after the Iraq War, he'd never been right in the head, claiming that the antidepressant Zoloft had caused him to hallucinate and black out. Well, the 8 margaritas and 2 pitchers of beer might have better explained his memory loss. He was so drunk that he left his service weapon in her car. So off to prison he went, but he didn't last long. While in the jail waiting to serve a life sentence, he was found unresponsive in his cell. Officials said there was no foul play. Rather than face the general population or spend the rest of his life in solitary, he decided the easy way out was a better option. Even one of the most notorious cases in the world has a cop at the center of it. Jeffrey Epstein's death is surrounded by rumors, and it just so happens that the main suspect among conspiracy theorists is a former police officer, Nicholas Tartaglione. Built like a tank, with a history of extreme violence, he should have been the last person on Earth sharing a cell with the most high-profile inmate in America. Tartaglione, a former New York cop, was convicted of 11 counts of murder, kidnapping resulting in death, and 1 count of narcotics conspiracy. Epstein was Tartaglione's cellmate when, before his death, he was found unconscious and curled up in the fetal position. Of course, video footage was missing, just like it was when he died 2 weeks later. Official jail records show that he'd initially told the guards that Tartaglione had tried to kill him, but he later walked that back and he said that he didn't know how he ended up with an orange fabric noose around his neck. Tartaglione claimed that he'd had his headphones on and then he saw Epstein passed out. Records show Epstein had insisted to prison staff that he'd never try to hurt himself and he was making plans for the future. Tartaglione is currently serving 4 life sentences. In 2025, news reports said that he was seeking a pardon, claiming that he'd been framed. But just like his former cellmate, who knows how long Tartaglione will last in prison. He's claimed there have already been numerous attempts on his life, leaving him with permanent injuries and a metal plate in his head. Regardless of their medals or rank, life on the inside is different for cops. If they're lucky, they'll keep their heads down and they'll make it out in one piece. But more often than not, they turn into walking targets. The kind prisoners are desperate not to miss. Now go check out what happens in the first 24 hours in prison, or click on this video instead.